All right, ladies and gentlemen, now don't get your hopes up. This isn't gonna be long. I'm burned out. I've been going all day. I've got to go do something brainless for a little while. I'm gonna go do some Tink stuff in a second. But look at this. Look at this post. This is a Facebook post. Look at this. Look at this. Do you see what's happening here? I'm scrolling through it. Look at that. This is about the labors of objectivist Sisyphus from Anoop Verma. I'm just going to show you again. Look at that. These people are going wild in here. Now, down here at the bottom, there's Motley Crue. I told him that him and his philosophers are a Motley Crue. Somebody posted that. Okay. Well, here's what's going on down here. Not here. Here we go. Anoop Verma says, fact and value is an atrocious article. I say, can you give one quote from the article and refute it? Just one. I doubt it. Then Anoop replies, no time for that. But you can scroll down in my timeline. If you get to about 3 years ago, we have discussed fact and value threadbare. In those days, I used to discuss Peikoff a lot, but now I have moved on. Well, Anoop, if you know it inside and out that well, then maybe you could give a reply. But I know you're not going to. I know. He has time to write this garbage, constantly writing garbage, but he has no time to to prove a point from stuff that he knows pat. He did that threadbare. He really knows that stuff. No time to say anything about it here, though. You're in public, Anoop. You could say something to prove your point. All right, that's all right. Nothing. There's no surprise there. Now, Robert Garmong, what are you doing? Why do I have respect for Robert Garmong? I have a lot of respect for him for some reason. Did he used to publish for ARI or something? What has he done in the past? But here he is, messing with me. Okay, first of all, he posted something about Ari, saying how Ari Armstrong is not up to par. And then today he says he reread his posting from yesterday. He says I was being loose and glib in referring to him as an undesirable type. Well, I think your subconscious threw that up out of an estimation of the things that Ari was saying and doing. So you're sort of married to it in the fact you said it, but he wishes to offer an apology. He made what he regarded as a freshman level. Ari made what Robert regards as a freshman level argument, but it was wrong of me to sling a character level term on the basis of a single argument. Well, Robert, was that really just a single argument? Or is Ari misunderstanding the fundamental essence of Rand's ethics? Now, if Ari pretty much gets it and he's just got one or two things wrong, fine. But if Ari is completely off base, then on what grounds are you so worried about remaining friends with him and not offending him and being polite? How many of our enemies, how many of the people who hate objectivism and are trying to fight against objectivism and debase it? Now look, objectivism stands or falls, right? The people who are arguing against it. Now, who is Robert Garmong? Robert Garmong, who are you? All right, I'm trying to relax here. This is not supposed to be this. I gotta relax. What is he up to? He says, be nice. What? Oh, okay. Let me just say that real quick before I get out of this thing. So Robert Garmong said that. I said, Ari Armstrong spends his time slandering one of the great humans of history. He's not a great guy. Ari comes in. He says, sweet, I have my very own YouTube hate tuber. I must have hit the big time. Just out of curiosity, are you Facebook friends with me just so you can troll me? No, we're Facebook friends because we're both friends with objectivism. But then I say, okay, here's what I'm trying to get to. I see it as an opportunity to disprove and humiliate our enemies. And Robert Garmong says, what's the point of humiliating someone? I don't see that as a value. Well, that's a floating abstraction, isn't it, Robert Garmong? Humiliating someone is a floating abstraction. Humiliating a known enemy or a self-declared enemy is a different story, isn't it? And what's the difference between humiliating someone and humiliating Adolf Hitler? Now, I'm not comparing Ari to Adolf Hitler. He said a couple things in his speech that show that he has a better understanding of Rand than a lot of people. And his stance on her determinism shows that he's head and shoulders above the regular crowd. Okay, so be it. But insofar as he's out in the world arguing that Ayn Rand's ethics is incomplete or incorrect, he is no friend of me or you or objectivism or any rational, independent person born in the future. So, let's see. Am I relaxing? I feel very relaxed right now. Okay. I went out today and what am I trying to get to? Oh, here we go. I went to the park to paint today. Why not? When I got out of work. And so, oh boy, FF comes and this is something to say. So I went to the park. This has been bad. Look at this. It only shows me a few comments. I have to sort it. And then it shows that's getting bad. Went to the park after work, sold a few paintings, which was crazy. What do we got here? Let's imagine that's true of the courts today. What is the best way of ensuring this remains the case into the future? Monopoly? Democracy? You know the whole reason the Constitution is there because the Founding Fathers understood how terrible those systems are. Monopoly? The Founding Fathers understood how terrible monopoly is? FF? If you watch this video, just understand that the Founding Fathers believed that there should be a monopoly on force by the government. How subject they are to despotism, oligarchy, and populist tyranny. Yeah, the Founding Fathers tried really hard to sidestep that. But how does the Constitution itself survive? Well, FF, how has it survived so far? I don't know. We're beating on its doors pretty hard, but here I am living in the United States. So capitalism is a totally different thing from democracy. It meets people's demand. Well, okay, it is. That's true. It meets people's demands, whatever they are, even the ones that conflict with those of the majority. Capitalism meets people's demands, right? Because it sells even to them. Yeah. True. Now, that's why I believe that government should have a very, very limited number of things that it can do, right? Because government is operated by the majority. So it shouldn't really have very much power. It shouldn't really be doing very much. Most of the stuff you do in your life, you should be able to contract for yourself, virtually all of it. It's only the use of physical force the government should be involved in fact. Okay, checks and balances are unavoidable, and monopolistic abuse is impossible. In capitalism. Right, monopolistic abuse is impossible in capitalism, so I don't know why you people have your panties in a bunch about monopolies. Don't you realize that the only valid use of the word monopoly is government power? So you guys who are running around saying that capitalism is efficient because it doesn't allow monopolies are proving my point. Capitalism doesn't have monopolies. Monopoly is not a concept in capitalism. It is a concept of government. It is a concept of government. Capitalism occurs underneath that concept of government. Okay, you people are so slow. I trust this system is not only to maintain a standard of justice, but to continue to improve upon it in the future. Well, we fought something called the Civil War. That was a good one. Then we let women have the vote. And then we did the civil rights movement. So that's 3 steps in my direction, and my Constitution did those. So jump on the bandwagon, FF, and come on home for the big victory. We already won the Cold War. What else do you people want? All right, what am I trying to get here? I was going back to that now. Am I ready to go in there? What shall I, okay, shall I turn on this guy? I'm going to let him speak for the last. I'm going to give him 10 minutes. From 15 on up. You guys know him. I just listened to this mostly. This, let me just, well, let's see. What did I want? Where was it going to be? You know what? I'll give him 15 minutes. I'm going to go play my tank game while I listen to this. And
status dogs, they
here he is saying, should I slow it down just a little? Here he is saying, well, this whole speech, he is saying that as you try to wrap your head around anarchy, you will have emotional revulsion, and you will have emotional doubt as your mind says, wait a minute, this is insane. And he says we need to have faith. He doesn't say it in so many words, but we need to have faith. We need to take our articles of faith fully into our soul and believe in them. Right? That's what I take him to mean. So let's let him say that now.
learn that's bad. And after a while, you don't have to hit them anymore because they know it was bad for me to poop on the rug because they have it deeply ingrained in them. Well, most of us, including me for a long time, have ingrained in us the feeling, the profound assumption that disobedience equals bad. And that is trained into us from before we can even talk, by most of our parents and by teachers and by society in general, and obviously by government and by the media. It's constantly bashed into us. And the depth of that feeling, that has nothing to do with intellectual understanding, but the depth of that feeling that it is bad to disobey authority takes a while to overcome. And I don't particularly like admitting that even when I was intellectually an anarchist, I could still feel that. Like there's a guy with a uniform and a badge, and part of me is like, do as he says. My brain is like, shut up. Why are you still in there? Because the psychological level is so deep that you can't just talk yourselves out of it. And one thing I would compare it to is like I actually just thought of this yesterday at Candles in the Dark. A kid who's like scared of monsters under his bed, and the parent comes in and says, all right, let's do this scientifically and rationally. We're going to turn on all the lights. We're going to investigate every corner. Is there, first of all, is there any monster there? No. Is there anywhere he could be hiding? We're going to look at every crevice. Is there any like way up to the floorboards? No, there's nothing there. And then you turn off the lights and you lie in bed and he's like, I'm pretty sure there are monsters under my bed. Because the fear doesn't come from logic and evidence. It comes from that gut level existential psychological fear. And that is where authoritarianism sticks in its roots and hangs on. And to get it out of there takes a lot more time and effort than just to understand, oh yeah, nobody has the right to rule me, blah, blah, blah. You know, very simple explanations for why authoritarianism is bogus. And if you want to know how powerful that type of indoctrination can be, one of the best examples I can point to is slavery. And I remember, I think I was still even a statist when this occurred to me. I was like, how does slavery work? You got one fat white guy on a plantation and you have 50 strong black slaves. How the hell does he keep them in line? Why don't they like kill him or beat him up or run away or something? They're way stronger than he is. You know, he might have a gun, but you know, he's going to sleep sometime. It didn't occur to me until much later. And then I had a more thorough understanding after I read the autobiography of Frederick Douglass, who was a slave. Most of them thought they were supposed to be slaves. And that's really hard for people today to understand and believe. What do you mean they thought they were supposed to be slaves? And Frederick Douglass talked about his own journey of realizing, I don't think this is okay. And to me, and the guy was brilliant, like his writings are just brilliant. To me, physically escaping slavery was way less impressive than reading about his mental escape from slavery, where he noticed the indoctrination and he undid it in himself. And then he tried to undo it in others, and he would argue with them. And a lot of the slaves would literally believe that to run away is immoral and constitutes stealing, because you're stealing yourself from the guy who rightfully owns you. That is how powerful this indoctrination can be. Let me use Frederick Douglass's own words. To make a contented slave, you must make a thoughtless one. It is necessary to darken his moral and mental vision, and as far as possible, to annihilate his power of reason. He must be able to detect no inconsistencies in slavery. That's the part of the quote you usually hear. I'm going to add what comes next. The man that takes his earnings must be able to convince him that he has a perfect right to do so. It must not depend upon mere force. The slave must know no higher law than his master's will. The whole relationship must not only demonstrate to his mind its necessity, but its absolute rightfulness. Now we can look back and say, that was horrible. How did they ever believe it? Oh, it's tax time. And you're bad if you don't pay because, hey, the man that takes your earnings has a perfect right to do so, doesn't he? Because it's law and taxation and we voted and there's all this mythology and constitutions and stuff. Ta-da, they have the right to take our money. The indoctrination is still there. Now, it was too long to include here, but there's a part in his autobiography where Frederick Douglass, basically, he was upgraded to being kind of a slave, but with an income tax, where his master said, you can go out and earn money on your own. I get most of it, but you can keep some. And at first he was all thrilled, and later he figured out, this is even worse, because it gives the illusion that I'm sort of free, but you get to decide how much of it to steal after the fact. That's called an income tax. A slave said that an income tax is worse than slavery. Most people don't know that, but it has to do with the mental indoctrination of realizing, why do I think I'm beholden to these people? Why do I think I have an obligation why is my own brain being a collaborator with my oppressors? And that is the result of indoctrination, being trained to feel at the deepest level that authority is real, that they have the right to rule, and that you have an obligation to obey.
All right, now it strikes me that he's not making an argument per se, is he? He's making an analogy, isn't he? There's no argument here, is there? He's analogizing. He's saying, there is this time when you're a child and you're afraid of the dark, and that just comes from deep in your stomach. And then there's this time when you respect authority and you just need to let that go. And there is this time when you, and he's making analogies, not arguments. He's saying, you know, and this is how preachers put their message. Preachers don't make arguments. They're not allowed to, are they? They tell stories and parables, and they make analogies. And then you're supposed to take the analogy and apply it to your concretes or whatever. Like the preacher who tells about the boy who built a rock wall and it was crooked, so he tore it down and rebuilt it straight or whatever. And you're supposed to take that and apply it to your life always. And this guy's speaking in analogies. He's saying this is similar to that. And the reason that concerns me is because he's just telling people, if you have any doubts about anarchism, if you have any doubts that letting go of government, letting go of authority, and just living in chaos, if you have any doubts about it, just forget those doubts. Just forget them. Just forget your doubts. That's what I think he's saying there. Oh, geez, I didn't turn the thing back on.
And so, if a cop pulls you over, there's two kinds of compliance. The first kind, I've said this before, I view cops the same way I view rabid dogs. Stupid animal, something's horribly wrong with its brain, it's dangerous, so maybe don't make any sudden movements or loud noises, because it might hurt you. But it's not because the rabid dog has a right to bite you. It's just self-preservation. So the one kind of compliance is, I don't want to get bit by this rabid dog. The other kind of compliance is feeling shame and guilt at having disobeyed some random arbitrary victim was like, oh, I'm so sorry I didn't have the right weird sticker on my other weird piece of metal that you told me to have on my car. I feel so ashamed. Can you please show mercy? That is collaboration that is your mind being a collaborator with your own oppressor, to feel bad about that. And we were all trained to feel bad about that. We were trained to feel the guilt and the shame of disobedience to authority. Now, I'm happy to say that this trend is, to some extent, going backwards. I mean, Exhibit A, hi guys. But there have also been polls asking the American people, if you could cheat on your taxes, as if there's such thing as cheating a robber and having it counting as cheating. If you could cheat on your taxes and get away with it, would it be moral to do so? Are you morally okay with that? The number of people who say yes has been going up, which means the number of people who are escaping that indoctrination. Absolutely. The number of people whose minds are no longer acting as collaborators with their oppressors is going up. And we just need it to get to 100%. Because imagine, and it's so easy to view the enemy as big and powerful in this. Imagine if that gets to 100% of just, we'll use just the US for now, American taxpayers. If 100 and some million people say, we don't have an obligation to give you any money. Now, if we think you might steal our stuff or put us in a cage, we might do it anyway out of self-preservation. Then you have a couple hundred million, sorry. people who the IRS wants to rob and who feel no obligation to comply. Meanwhile, you have less than 100,000 IRS paper pushers, only like 2,000 of which are armed. The rest just push paper around. How do you think they could rob 100 million people if those 100 million people didn't feel an obligation to obey and pay? They couldn't. The victims of authoritarian control always outnumber the victimizers, and they have to economically. Like, if you have 15 thugs robbing one guy, it doesn't work. He doesn't produce enough to fund the 15 thugs. They have to rob a huge number. And if that huge number stops imagining an obligation to go along with the robbery, they're in deep doo-doo. When you speak and act out in the real world as if you have an obligation to obey, and you talk that way in front of other people because you don't want to sound weird and kooky, you are reinforcing their indoctrination. You are basically helping them to be collaborators against themselves and against you. Whereas if you have the courage to go out there and just openly and confidently say, yeah, all taxation is bogus, taxation is theft, all the government laws that are the initiation of violence, they're all illegitimate, and you have zero obligation to obey them. Don't feel guilty if you want to smoke pot or hide it. You might want to be careful depending on where you are and how hard you have to hide it. Again, out of self-preservation, because there are rabid dogs who would bite you if they knew you were doing that. But don't feel guilt about disobeying these random arbitrary decrees of a bunch of crooks. Don't believe in the divine right of politicians. You own yourself. And the thing is, the more we act that way and talk that way confidently, the more other people hear it. And at least they have the opportunity to question it and think about it. Because if they never hear it anywhere, they're the slave on the plantation who thinks this is how it is, this is how it should be. We need to be the Frederick Douglass going, just occurred to me, this isn't how it should be. This is screwed up. And they might fight back and they might complain. But if they don't hear it from you, they may not hear it from anybody. And you are allowing them to be collaborators against themselves. You have to push human consciousness in the right direction. And you cannot and you will not do that as long as you feel any shame or guilt or hesitation when it comes to owning yourself. You have to all the way know that you are beholden to no one, to no legislation, to no governing body, to no authority above your own conscience. That is where the real battle happens.
All right. Now, he's making a fair enough point as far as philosophy, ethics, morality, epistemology goes. He's making a pretty good point as far as a lot of that goes. Now then, does he realize that his life, that he lives and breathes as a result of the system that he lives inside of, and that if he weren't in the system that he's inside of, it would be he would be in another system, like a shithole like Sweden or France? How would you like to be in a shithole like Freedom or France, or like Sweden or France there, Mr. Larkin Rose? How would that be? How would you feel over there? All your daydreams about all these things that they want to keep. They want to keep functioning court systems. Jesus Christ, half the world doesn't have functioning court systems. 3/4 of the world doesn't have functioning court systems. The United States doesn't even have functioning court systems half the time. We let OJ go. So you guys are going to have court system, huh? Jesus Christ. They want to keep all these lovely things that capitalism and freedom have created. Just American style. They don't want to keep the corrupt systems that go on in Russia and stuff, do they? They say they'll have courts, but they'll be good courts, won't they? They'll be courts like American courts, won't they? Ay, boy.
People talk about we have to have a revolution, blah, 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 and whatever. The revolution that matters is people figuring out those people are not the boss of us and escaping the indoctrination so that we're not collaborators with the enemy against ourselves. To quote Stephen Biko, the most potent weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And that is absolutely true. There are tanks and bombs and all that. People talk about, what about all these big machines they have? People man those machines until people don't man those machines. And when a tank doesn't have a tank driver in it, not really a threat to us anymore. Because remember, our oppressors come from us. Like Etienne was talking about. We're the ones who, we as a whole, are the ones who volunteer to oppress ourselves on behalf of the lying crooks in DC or state capitals. When
Is that what
ends,
you're going to say
we
when
don't let them
tanks
have
come
control of our
rolling
brains,
towards your society?
then they don't have control of our bodies.
Oh,
and people
those
talk about
tanks have
like,
to have a
we need
driver.
guns to be able to defend ourselves. Excellent. We need to use cryptos to be able to build alternative markets and ways of trading that the the parasites can't spy on and rob us, and we need bartering and a black market and ways to trade around them. All of those are awesome, and none of them do any good if people don't first give up the notion that we have an obligation to bow. Because if you still believe you have an obligation to bow, then you're like, come take it. And they say, that's illegal. And you say, okay, you can have it. And unfortunately, that's a lot of conservative America. And it's the same thing with cryptos and black markets or anything else. They say, tisk, you're not allowed to do that. Okay, I'm so sorry. Instead of, oh, I certainly won't do that anymore. Sneak and hide, but if you don't feel guilt at disobeying the control freaks and you spread that attitude and that viewpoint to other people, they lose all their power because, like the quote said, the only power they have is the power we give them by pretending they have the right to do that. So here is the last part of that Etienne thing. Discourse on Voluntary Servitude is the title of the whole thing, the whole article. This is the end of it. Resolve to serve no more, and you are at once freed. I do not ask that you place hands upon the tyrant to topple him over, but simply that you support him no longer. Then you will behold him like a great colossus whose pedestal has been pulled away, fall of his own weight, and break in pieces. Of course, out of self-preservation, at the moment, you may still have to cooperate with certain types of and certain levels of injustice and stuff here and there to not get shot or thrown in a cage. The same way you might cooperate with an armed thug or, be careful around a rabid dog. But don't act and don't think as if the thug or the rabid dog has some moral right to do what it does and that you have some moral obligation to go along with it and cooperate. In other words, don't let your own mind be a collaborator of your oppressor. Without shame, without any guilt, without any hesitation, always think like you own yourself, and talk like you own yourself, and act like you own yourself, because you do. Thank you.
Boy. A perfectly reasonable, you don't own yourself. You are an individual. You are a sovereign individual. So, unfortunately, the emotional tone of the message is whatever. The emotional tone of the message is wooden because the philosophical underpinnings of the message are a mess. So, unfortunate, Mr. Larkin, Philip Larkin. Why do I want to call him Philip Larkin? It's Larkin Rose, isn't it? Philip Larkin, that's much better. Not that is, not that the message is 1,000% wrong, just that they don't have the philosophy to back up why that message is accurate, and therefore the message itself is even incomplete. When we do someday get a government with voluntary taxation, we're going to still pay taxes, just going to do it voluntarily, right? Do we all agree on that much? Or do we not agree on that much? Do they think they're going to have a voluntarily taxed society that doesn't pay taxes? So basically what we're arguing over, if you ask me, is a percentage. And we're arguing over the practical question of whether or not the percentage is going to climb up irrevocably higher if we allow them to take whatever percentage they damn well please. And that, I think, is the case. If we allow them to take whatever percentage they damn well please, they're going to end up taking more than we would have liked them to take. Cheese and rice, I missed it. But that does not an argument make. That's just a snazzy thing for me to say. I don't remember what I was saying, actually. I'm worried about. These guys behind me told me to fall back, so I'm afraid they might shoot me in the back if I don't back up. People have been known to do that kind of thing. They won't come forward. They want me to adjust my play, or else they'll shoot me. Yes, I hate team games. Now, this team game is kind of okay because I'm in a tank, you know? It's like, how much harassment can they give me? You know? Like in my team, literally my team, how much can my own team harass me if I don't play the way they want me to? Quite a bit. The answer is quite a bit. For hell's sakes. I'm going to have to aim very carefully. I'm just trying to hit right on the front of him. It's just not working. Oh boy, I just took 2 big slammers. Jesus. 3. Okay, this is not looking good. See those guys back there? What are you guys waiting for back there? Look at them. All right. What's our action plan here, for hell's sakes? All right, should we see if we can get some more Philip Rose on or something like this? Okay, yeah, so I went to the park. Told you about the little easel I did. And I went and set up some of my paintings to sell. And some people bought some of them, for hell's sakes. I just, as reasonable prices, $5 for really small ones, $10 for medium, $20 for big. And I didn't have any really big ones, but I'm gonna go again someday when it's nice and try again. I don't really make any money on a painting that takes me 2 or 3 hours to paint. Sell for $5 is not really reasonable, but they're just my little canvases that I have about the house, you know, and I have shelves and shelves full of these things now. So I go set them out on this stone wall at the park, and I paint some of the scenes there at the park too, which is fun. To, you know, people look at it and they say, "Oh, that's on this pathway here." It sure is. It's right where you're standing. So I've been a little surprised at what people are willing to buy. I had one painting of a fence going into the distance, and the ground was a light brown, and the sky was a garish bright red. The whole sky was a garish bright red. I don't remember what I was thinking when I painted it. For some reason, this guy bought it. I don't know why. He bought 5. Him and his wife bought 5 paintings. So a skater dude bought one of my black fences that's just a fence on a white background. He said, "I love the negative space, dude." And he's right. He's right. It has a really interesting feel to it. I really love that painting. Okay, I've kind of advanced really freaking far here. Get some interesting folks show up at the old park. And to see what you're up to. This nice lady bought a couple of tall canvases matching in size, and I reckon she'll hang them. Oh, her husband actually came with their dog later and said that he had seen these paintings when he walked through the park and saw me, and later he went home and those paintings were hanging on his living room wall. This guy here was visible to me and I didn't see him. Now there's my team back there, a whole nest of them stuck back there. It's just hiding behind rocks. Nobody's shooting at them or anything. They're just hiding. All right. I better end this stream because I'm so mentally put out I can't even maintain a conversation, even maintain a speak. Go in here and see if you can even maintain. What is this? What's being said? Asmiri. Oh, is it? Metaethics. Well, Kyle, what is metaethics? I don't know. What the hell is metaethics? Ethics is a branch of philosophy dealing with human action. Well, dealing with normative. Gee, see, I'm so tired I can't even give a definition of. Yeah, Kyle probably. Oh, Kyle. Metaethics. Yes. Metaphysics is just the science that says something exists, and ethics is the science of how humans should act. So how are those two things linked? I don't know. You'd have to tell me. Well, thanks for coming in, guys. I'm going to end this stream now and have a rest. Have a good night.